morning, everyone.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Prof.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. For 2 more minutes, we were going to start. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and hello from Malaysia. Welcome to today's webinar, Boost Global Response Towards Vaccine R&D and Economic Impact. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. We will begin our program shortly. I would like to kick off today's program by reminding you some of the housekeeping items as seen on the screen. First of all, please turn off your microphone during the session and only unmute when you are required to speak. Please turn on your camera so that we can see each other. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to message us on the chat box. We will try our best to address your concerns. The chat box is also there for you all to introduce yourself. Please give us your name and your organization. Last but not least, no phone calls or disruption during the session. Note that this session will be recorded and live on YouTube. The recording will be saved on our YouTube channel right after the session. An evaluation survey will appear at the end of our session. Please spend some of the time to provide your feedback. And it will really be meaningful for us to our coming webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, and once again, welcome all to our webinar organized by AIMST U4 Committee. My name is Jenny Chai Hui Chi, and I'm proud to tell you that I'm a BSc Biotechnology degree student at AIMST University. It is a great honor for me to serve as the MC for today's webinar. If anyone has any issue with audio or video, please use the chat box, and we will do our best to help you. To start the session, I would like to invite our chairperson of the webinar, Vinodini Kunalan, to say a few words and introduce the moderator. Vinodini, floor is yours.
Thank you, our MC, Ms. Chai. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this webinar. I'm Vinodini Kunalan, the chairperson of this webinar, and I'm a Year 2 BSc Biotechnology student from AIMST University. Our U4 community take this opportunity to organize this webinar, intend to raise the awareness of public towards this current COVID-19 pandemic. This is the reason why we are bringing together expertise to share their knowledge, experience, and also discoveries. In the end of this webinar, I wish you all are well prepared and confident to fight against this pandemic. We are honored to have Senior Professor Manikam Ravichandran, Dean of Faculty of Applied Sciences from AIMST University, and Dr. Jan Muscut from Researcher of Social and Economic Geography from Belgium to be our speakers for this webinar. And our distinguished guest, Ms. Agalia Murugan, Lecturer of UFO Activity, SGFS from AIMST University, Malaysia, and our Senior Associate Professor, Dr. Subhash from Faculty of Applied Sciences of AIMST University, will be our moderator of today's webinar. Now I would like to introduce our moderator, Senior Associate Professor, Dr. Subhash. Dr. Subhash completed his BSc Botany and MSc Botany degrees education at the University of Pune, India. In June 2000, he had received a doctoral fellowship to pursue a PhD in molecular genetics at the National University of Malaysia. In 2004, he was appointed as a senior research officer at Melaka Institute of Biotechnology, a research wing of Melaka Biotechnology Corporation, Malaysia. In April 2005, he was picked as a principal investigator, head of R&D department in Melaka Institute of Biotechnology, Malaysia. In April 2008, he was invited by the AIMST University as a visiting faculty for their Department of Biotechnology. Currently, he is serving as a senior associate professor of biotechnology. In 2009, he was nominated for the Association of Agricultural Scientists in Indian Origin Young Scientist Award. Recently, he has earned his professional certification in biorisk management and biosecurity from the International Federation of Biosafety Association Canada. He has published 56 peer-reviewed articles, 6 books, and submitted 11,918 DNA sequences in GenBank. He has received 18 awards and fellowship at the international level. He has guided 96 students, including postgraduates, undergraduates, and also industrial trainees. Welcome you all to this webinar. I hope all the participants can enjoy this webinar and also can gain new knowledge about this current COVID-19 pandemic. Now I would like to pass the floor to our MC, Ms. Chai. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Vinodini. Now I request moderator of today's webinar, Dr. Subhash, to start the session. Dr. Subhash, please.
Thank you very much, Chai. Thank you very much, Ms. Vinodini, for nice introduction. Very good morning to all the participants, those are in our virtual room and those are viewing our program on YouTube live and on Facebook. First, I want to congratulate the students, those who have organized this webinar, because the students from Faculty of Applied Sciences, Faculty of Dentistry, and Faculty of Business, they are, done a wonderful job. They have organized this timely and important webinar. And I want to thank all the students for inviting me to moderate this session. Ladies and gentlemen, if we look at the chronology of the COVID-19 pandemic, the first case of COVID-19 can be traced back to 17 November 2019. Means outbreak happened around 1 year and 11 days ago. So as of today, globally around 60.3 million confirmed reported cases of COVID are reported by WHO, and out of that around 1.5 million patients lost their lives. If you see the recent trends, what's happening globally, daily around or more than 500,000 cases are reported, and more than 10,000 people, those infected, are dying because of this COVID pandemic. So how we are going to stop this? To stop it, the whole world is desperate to have a COVID-19 vaccine. So our first speaker, Senior Professor Yam Ravichandran, is going to talk on vaccines. It will help all the participants to learn more about the different types of vaccines, their advantages, disadvantages, and other things. So I just want to introduce Professor Ravi in brief before he starts his talk. Currently, Senior Professor Yam Ravichandran is serving as the Dean of Faculty of Applied Sciences at AIMST University. He got his MSc Medical Microbiology degree from Christian Medical College, Vellore, India. And he earned his PhD in Biotechnology degree from Anna University, Chennai, India. His research interests are in genetically engineered cholera vaccine, its formulation, molecular diagnostics, and phage therapy. He has published 70 research articles in various international peer-reviewed scientific journals. He has supervised 40 postgraduate students and filed 8 patents and commercialized 3 different products for diagnostic purpose. In addition to that, he has been awarded 44 national and international awards for the academic and research excellence. And he was an associate member and committee member on top research scientists Malaysia of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. It's also called as ASM. He was the former Vice Chancellor of AIMST University. So with this little bit background, I would like to invite Professor Ravi to start his presentation. Professor Ravi, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Subhas, and all my dear students. And actually, it's an excellent organization, very professionally done. And they approached me to give a talk, and I kindly agreed. But I see that the quantum of professionalism is amazing. And thank you, Dr. Subhas, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Vinodini, for patiently waiting for my title and the details and so on. So I understand your patience on it. And all the team members, FAS and other faculties involved, faculty student involved, congratulations to all of you for excellently organizing and managed to include an international speaker in this very important talk. And I'd like to thank SJFS. Actually, they have taken the UFO project to the next level. I think I have to thank Mr. Kalia and all the other team. I think this is the way to do. Actually, this is the way we create the next generation who can face the current pandemic. So I think it is a way forward for it. Thank you, Ms. Akalia, and so on. Before I start, I'll also thank the next speaker, Dr. John Mascot, from Social and Economic Geography from Belgium, will be the next speaker there. So you can keep, I would like to keep my talk shorter, and we can have more Q&A session at the end of my talk. Without further delay, with all the thank you to all of you, let me start to share my screen. So my title of my talk, I'm just going to talk about the biology of COVID-19 disease, and it's just caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and also a little bit on clinical manifestation and diagnostics, vaccine and therapeutics, and what are the opportunities we have in this COVID era, and what are the 5 pillars that we have to follow to sustain ourselves emotionally and socially in this planet. So about the coronavirus. Coronavirus are large enveloped RNA viruses, and viruses are smaller than bacteria. They are considered as a particle, and only inside a cell they are viable. So the human coronaviruses have been there. They're called as common cold, and they can cause lower respiratory tract infection, and have been implicated in gastroenteritis in infant. Actually, if you see many of the animal diseases and in birds and in canines and felines, and these coronavirus disease is there. Even dogs also have this, and if you see many of your dogs' immunization scheme, they have a vaccination for coronavirus there. So novel coronavirus have been identified in the past for severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, on the Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS. This has been there happening in the past, and a lot of animal coronaviruses, disease of economic importance, it's happening in the domestic animals such as birds, IBV, infectious bursal disease, and in animals. What is coronavirus? Coronavirus is an enveloped virus. There are two types of, you can broadly classify the virus with virus actually multiply now mammalian cells, eukaryotic cells, and when they bud out, they take a piece of the membrane. The one which take the piece of the membrane, they are called enveloped. This particular coronavirus has envelope around it, and with the size of around with the size of around 120 to 160 nanometer, and it has yeah. So they are unsegmented positive sense RNA virus. And the size of the genome is around 28,000 kb, and 20 means around 28,000 nucleotides it has. They are polyadenylated at the 3' end. They have a helical around the RNA genome. It has the helical nucleocapsids. There are protein which is sticking onto the RNA molecule. And they are around 20 nanometer long club-shaped projection. These are the important antigen everyone talking about it around the virus. They are called spike protein. This is actually one of the important vaccine target for coronavirus. And the spike protein binds to the receptor in human cell. It is called ACE. So that is the receptor it binds, and so that's how the virus enters the cell. So the naming of the virus has been evolving. I think you have seen an example of this COVID-19. COVID-19 is the disease, but the name of the virus is SARS-CoV-2. Previously, it was called as novel coronavirus 2019. So this is how the virus was named. And similarly, there is a SARS virus before in 2003. It is called SARS-CoV, but this one is called SARS-CoV-2. And there is also another coronavirus called Middle East respiratory syndrome virus, which caused outbreak in 2012. And the virus name is called MERS-CoV. And there were viruses since 1960. The coronaviruses, we've been there. They've been causing common cold. If you see a textbook, virology textbook, you can see these 3 or 4 viruses. 229E and NL63, these are alpha coronaviruses, and OC43 and HKU1 beta coronavirus. These are the human coronaviruses that has been causing common cold, and followed by they have a SARS and MERS and SARS-CoV-2. These viruses have been emerging, and they all are beta coronaviruses. The people around the world community get infected with coronaviruses of this, the common cold, the 4, 229E, NL63, OC43, and HKU1. And what happened now is some of the coronavirus that has been circulating in the animal, when we don't follow sustainable practices, they jump from animal into human by modifying the receptors, the ACE receptor, the spike antigen, the submutation, they happen to bind to our own receptor. So the recent examples are our SARS viruses. So it happened, like Dr. Subhas mentioned, it started in December 2019. We almost reached 1 year of this whole scenario. And this is one of the good example how virology has been evolving. Normally, when you want to buy a virology textbook, we look for the revision edition and then buy, like in Javid's review in microbiology, when the HIV was there in 1990s, and we wait for the next edition to look for the updates. What are the things there? We wait for 1 year. Now you can see that textbook is evolving. Actually, what we learned in January last year, March, even the name also changed, and many of the modalities and the treatment all been evolving. So the way in an unprecedented manner and fast manner, the science is advancing. So this is one of the good example. What we study last week might not be relevant this week, particularly in the case of COVID. And this disease now has been causing more than 1.4 million deaths. And you can see this scenario, more than 60 million cases throughout the world, and it unprecedented manner, and it has caused a lot of issues around the world. And looking at Malaysia, I think we are on the positive side, and this one you can get from KKM social media, and so there is a reducing trend we can see. Most of the though the case we have red zones and so on, we can see the positive outlook in terms of case incidence. It is gradually reducing, but everyone must follow the SOPs. We call SOPs, and stay safe and so on. So looking at the genome of this particular virus, and it's around, the size of the genome is around 29,674 bases. It's a positive strand RNA virus. Means that it doesn't have to make a negative strand. Means if it is negative strand, it has to make a copy of it. But this strand, when the virus enters into the cell, it can make translation and make a copies of it gene. It has basically 3 group of genes, and ORF1A, ORF1B, and spike. These are 3 group of gene it has, and it's a good virus actually. If you look at this polymerase, RNA-dependent DNA polymerase gene, it has a proofreading capability. It can correct if it won't mutate like influenza and some other viruses. They have ability to correct the mutations. So this is a proofreading RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. RNA-dependent RNA polymerase means it uses the RNA and create an RNA copy out of it. And they have many proteases, papain-like proteases that involves in splicing the spike genes. So this is spike gene, and they have other different component transmembrane domain. I'll tell you more about these different genes. So this we have seen the structure of the virus before. So when you compare the genome of MERS-CoV and SARS-CoV, they are basically structurally similar. And I was studying the gene similarity of spike protein with the help of Mr. Yugi, and we studied that. And the spike protein is also conserved, but the percentage similarity is around 30 to 35% among the birds, and other animals around 50% and so on. But SARS and MERS are structurally similar in terms of gene organization. It has the same ORF1A and 1B, the big chunk, and the spike, and the other structural gene. At the end, it has a 3' poly A and untranslated region and so on. And if you look at the spike protein of both SARS and MERS, and it has 2 domains. It basically has a S1 domain and S2 domain. These are 2 subunits. S1 has RBD, that is the current target for vaccine. It is called receptor binding domain or receptor binding site, which bind to the ACE receptor of the mammalian cell. Not only to the ACE receptor, it is known to bind to other receptor. I can tell you shortly. So the spike protein is the major target, as I mentioned to you. It has the S1 and S2 domain. So when the protein is translated, normally virus won't make a separate protein. It makes a polyprotein, long protein, and this protease will help to chop into the individual subunit and individual protein. So the proteases which we saw before, they will help to cut this part. So this S1 subunit help the virus to bind to the receptor, and this S2 subunit will help to fuse the virus into the cell. It is called transmembrane repeat, and it has a lot of other complicated name like heptarepeat, and they helps to virus to enter the cells. Okay, just to keep it simple. So this is what we did a simple study by Mr. Yuganesh and bioinformatics team, and we studied the organization of the coronaviruses of various alpha, beta, and so on. They are similar actually. These viruses have not evolved that much, and so all these, the poly A and the OR of A, B, and the spike. If you look at the spike, everything has a spike, but the composition is slightly different. And where the virus came from, actually, Malaysia is a tropical rainforest. We have a lot of animals live there, and a lot of birds and insects and plant species there. So similarly, there are viruses. Every organism, living organism, have different type of diseases. A human have different type of viruses. Animal have different type of viruses, and so on. Birds have different type of viruses. So what happens is when we breach our territory into their territory, like eating their meat and like destroying the forest, building housing, and when we do things in an unsustainable manner, if you do it in a sustainable manner, the animals will go into their domain. They won't come into our side. So what happens is when we handle their dead animals, and then they get exposed to our body, and then when repeatedly exposed, the random mutation happens, that if it happened to bind to our receptor, then it becomes human virus. The animal virus become a human virus. It's called, normally it's a zoonotic disease, but when the mutation happen, and when it is happened between animal, it is animal transmission. Now it get adapted, it become a human transmission. That's what happened to it. So this, because we all are evolved, human have human genome have 23 pairs of chromosome, and we have 5,000 over genes, and if you look at the gene similarity, we are very similar to monkeys. There are 98% similar to chimpanzees, and almost 60 to 80% to cow and goat and mouse and many animals. So we share a lot of gene similarity, and also we share the receptors in our cells similarly. ACE is one example, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor. That is the receptor for the coronavirus. ACE2 is the receptor for the coronavirus. This receptor is also happened to present in bats, cats, civet cats, and swine and ferrets, and even in some primates, monkeys also have this receptor. So basically, essentially, when the virus is the gateway, the virus is binding to the ACE2 receptor. If this receptor is present in other animal, it can also infect those animals, but the severity of symptom depends on the immune status of those animals and also the metabolism of this animal. So this was first this was there in Rhinophilus bats as a reservoir viruses. Means reservoir means it is there in the thing and it won't really kill the bats. And this virus, the secondary host was considered as pangolins. And this also has the virus, and they are like circulating. They'll be there in the body in a subclinical manner, but when it is accidentally contacted by human, and it will go inside there. So they are transmitted by droplets and fomites and fecal. And this virus also has property to cause enteric symptoms. It binds to the intestinal epithelial cell. It causes mild diarrhea. The example is actually it causes severe, this coronavirus, IBV is a coronavirus in birds, it causes severe diarrhea. Even in pigs, porcine coronavirus also causes diarrhea in pigs. So this virus is actually two-armed it has, and it can have respiratory symptoms and it can have gastrointestinal symptoms. The human coronavirus, what we have now, it is like 80-90% respiratory symptoms and 10% gastrointestinal symptoms. So recently it has been reported this virus also known to infect minks. It's a kind of a small animal, and they breed this animal and to make coats. Okay. And they found that more than 17 million mink in Denmark has been infected by this coronavirus. There was a human transmission, and this recently it was reported there are 214 human cases. They had to cull all these reared minks, and they had to stop the transmission. And if you look at the life cycle, it's I don't want to go in detail, and it's very interesting to see that each coronavirus carries a fragment of mammalian or human cell membranes. And let's say this is the virus, it binds to the receptor. I told you the ACE2 receptor, it binds to the receptor. Once it enters the cell, it uncoats. It has a long RNA, it's a positive sense RNA, and that is translated into a protein, polyprotein. It is a long protein, and that protein produces that long RNA. Then it also has transcription process. It makes nested transcription. So the multiple protein from this RNA are produced either by nested transcription or as a polyprotein. They are cut by the proteases. They assemble onto the endoplasmic reticulum. You know, when a protein synthesis happens, it assembles in the endoplasmic reticulum, and it takes the piece of the membrane, and the RNA with the ribonucleocapsid is packed inside that endoplasmic reticulum membrane, and then makes a mature virus. This virus will butt out and then go out of the cell and infect another cell. This is how the replication of the virus. You know, why we need to understand the replication is that we want to stop the virus. Where we can stop? We can stop that entry by vaccination, or by using neutralizing antibodies. We can block the receptors so that the virus cannot entry. Number two, we can block the virus, but synthesizing the positive sense RNA, making the RNA by synthesis. So the antiviral drug that currently being developed for this, I'll tell you the name later. So that blocks the RNA synthesis. It's a nucleoside analog. It blocks the viral RNA replication. And so on. So understanding the viral replication is very important for biologists and molecular biologists and virologists to develop drug against this virus. And coming to the clinical presentation, and it causes fever, cough, and myalgias, and so on. It also causes GI symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms, and I will not focus more on it, but some people even get diarrhea and sore throat, and they get a loss of smell. These are some of the symptoms caused by virus, and there are various degree of symptoms has been reported. This has happened in the early days because we need to know what type of symptoms are normally there in the survivors, what type of symptoms have been observed in the one who did not survive this infection. So if they found all of them had fever, all of them had cough, and dyspnea is shortness of breath, and some of them get an ICU admission, and all of them have given with steroids. Steroids has been nowadays has been proven. Dexamethasone has been proven as one of the best drug, and all of them are positive for the RNA strand by reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. In term of case fatality rate, it can vary between less than 2% and 0.2% to 80%, but it increases with the age. So when the age increases, and with the people with the systemic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, the case fatality rate increases. And typical flu-like symptoms, normally fever and cough, and as I mentioned earlier, they have dry cough, and that can lead to the shortness of breath, and it can lead to the running nose and sneezing, stuffy nose. And incubation period for coronavirus has been they call around 14 days. That's why the MCOs, and they keep for 2 weeks so that the infection is contained in that area. It won't go to the other areas. So the good news is that 80% of the cases are mild. More than 80% of the cases are mild, and you have to worry. Only the fatality rate is around 1 to 2%, less than 1 to 2%, and but the risk is increases. The case fatality rate increases by age, and that's why the young children and adults, the older people, are not advised to go out of their stay safe at home. That's what we say. So pre-existing condition that has been documented to cause increased mortality are cardiovascular diseases, diabetics, and chronic respiratory diseases and hypertension. So those who have this have to be very cautious, and they have to take extra precautions and stay safe at home. This is the drug I was telling you. The antiviral and anti-inflammatory drug has been used. There are so many things. People talk about chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine. This has been evolving. And some people talk about azithromycin. And the area landscape has been changing in terms of treatment. And it is also, we do not want to talk about why they push certain drugs and so on. So far, dexamethasone has been promising in treating this COVID patient in a severe condition. Remdesivir has some amount of, it blocks the RNA polymerase, and it has, but some people have different opinions. Some say that the percentage of protection by remdesivir, when you value with the cost, it's very little. That's what they say. And the mechanism, as a molecular biologist, we understand how they work. As I mentioned to you, when the RNA polymerase is remdesivir actually is a nucleotide analog. You know, RNA has A, T, G, and instead of T, it has a U, uracil, and G. So it's one of the nucleotide molecule, similar to one of the nucleotides. So when they are transcribed, this molecule will get integrated into the RNA. One of the RNA polymerase will integrate this nucleotide into the RNA. When this unusual nucleotide is incorporated, ribonucleotide is incorporated, the inhibition of replication and also inhibition of the protein synthesis happens. So mostly the RNA cannot replicate. When there is no RNA, so it cannot be packaged into a virus. So basically the RDP is used as a substrate for the viral RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. And so that will inhibit the RNA replication and in turn inhibit the viral replication. So other mode of treatment is convalescent plasma. Because people who survive from, as we know that 80% of the people survive the disease. So they have an antibody to this, and convalescent sera from these patients' antibodies help to protect the severely infected COVID patients. So what they do is they take the serum blood and then isolate the antibody, means take the serum and then use that to check for other diseases like HIV, hepatitis, and other things. They will use those those antibodies for treating the patients. How do they do the diagnosis? The diagnosis, they will take a nasopharyngeal swab, which has to go deep inside, and sometimes you can also use a nasal wash or bronchoalveolar lavage. It's a wash taken from the lungs, or stool and blood is not very, blood you can use to look for the virus, viral antigen or antibody. Stool, very rarely you can detect, but it is known to infect the gut epithelial cells. So even again, diagnostic, there are so many diagnostics, we talk about it. I'll just to simplicity, I'd classify the diagnostic tests into 3: molecular test, antibody test, and antigen test. In molecular test, we look at the viral RNA. We take the viral RNA and then we detect the viral RNA by polymerase chain reaction. In antibody detection test, we take the patient's blood and using an anti-COVID antibody, mostly the spike antibody or whatever the antigens present, the antibody specific to it, we detect by ELISA or immunochromatography. Immunochromatography is like a dipstick. It's like we do the pregnancy test. We have a dipstick that the antibodies are immobilized there, then be able to detect, and then finally you get a color reaction with the reaction of the gold conjugate. We see a red color band in the test. Similarly, antigen can be detected from the nasal swab. Wash the nasal swab, and it is run on a chromatography where antibody of the virus are immobilized. The virus is captured, and then they will come back with the conjugate, which is labeled with the gold, and you can detect them on it. So basically, in nutshell, for diagnosis can be molecular, RT-PCR, antigen detection, and antibody detection. How do we do RT-PCR? Because the viral has an RNA. We use a primer specific to the virus. We make we convert the RNA into DNA, double-stranded DNA, and then that is amplified by PCR. So multiple bands are detected. They are tagged with the fluorescent molecules, and it is detected by a real-time PCR machine. So one of the things is that this particular assay is very, very sensitive. Very sensitive. Even one molecule or one virus is just floating, not causing the disease, but sitting in the nose also can give you a positive result. One other thing we need to know about, there's something called CT, cycle threshold. If you amplify beyond certain cycle, there's a threshold cycle. So that will exclude. If your amplification start in below certain cycle, let's say 20 cycles or 15 cycles, means that is actually you have good viral load. If the cycle amplification start beyond around 30 or 32 cycles, means it's amplifying, you're able to see the virus at the back end. So viral load is very low. So you need to understand the viral load and to correlate with the patient symptoms and then diagnose this disease. So what are the genes they use for? Currently, you are supposed to detect at least 2 genes by RT-PCR in any molecular test. It can be the polymerase gene or an E gene or N gene. So if you see any of the RT-PCR kit, they will be detecting any 2 of this gene by that. So because one gene, sometimes there is a rare mutation there, you might miss it. That's why in RT-PCR, they always recommend to have 2 genes according to the CDC recommendation. So you have to check whenever you do an RT-PCR, anyone does it, you can check what gene they are using and so on. So we can stop the spread by community measures like social distancing, protect yourself, and sanitize yourself, wash your hand quite often, and stay at home. And these are I think this has been extensively educated. This is actually a good example of science education. The whole world is learning how to protect ourselves. And there are so many types of masks to use. And some people ask what type of mask to use. Can you use cloths or whatever? I just came across a study in Science, and they found that as long as you see the surgical mask, which has 3 layers, as long as you have 3 layers in the mask, and it gives good protection. It's almost N95 is the best mask, but a surgical mask is also as good as close to that. And certain things like cotton mask, and they does give protection when compared to the nothing. So, but it has a various level of protection it gives. And at AIMST University, we also have to credit the Faculty of Pharmacy. In the early time itself, we developed our own sanitizer, hand rub sanitizer. We have a WHO formulation. It's nothing, it's very simple to make. It basically ethanol 80% and glycerol 1.45% and hydrogen peroxide 0.125%. That is one formulation with ethanol. The other formulation you can have, some people for religious reasons, they cannot use ethanol, they can use isopropyl alcohol. That is 75% isopropyl alcohol and 1.45% glycerol and 0.125 hydrogen peroxide. So I'm glad to tell you all that AIMST University, we got hundreds of bottles of this in the early days itself, and it was every faculty, every division, security, all were provided with this hand rub sanitizer. Currently, it is produced by pharmacy faculty, and it is dispensed by our AIMST clinic. And there's nothing we need to learn from flu pandemic and other diseases. So the social distancing does work. Okay, all this wearing mask and the quarantining and infection control practices, hand washing best practices. If you don't do, there will be a big peak of the disease, and we won't be able to cope with that. But if you follow that, the disease spread will be less contained. And by the time when it comes to that, some extent, we will have vaccines to protect this disease. So preventive measures and do or knows, we know, wash your hand and all we saw, avoid close contact, maintain the distance, stay home, self-isolate. If you think if you're exposed to people, don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth and without washing the hand. When you're out of the house, do not touch any of your face, mucosal areas like eyes. Eyes, the disease can enter very easily. Nose, it can enter very easily. Mouth, it can enter very easily. So if you want to touch your face, just use a hand sanitizer and then you can start itching. Vaccination is the best, another way to protect. It gives an active immunity. And it gives immune response when you inject the whole virus, a part of the virus, a part of the antigen. It gives protection, and it's one of the best way. But we have to be very cautious. Normally, the vaccines are evaluated for a long term. So we don't know whenever there's a vaccine, it's not only the immunity for the vaccine, and you need to know if there's any side effects due to the vaccines. For example, there was a rotavirus vaccine some time ago. When they produce it, it's good, immunogenic and so on. When they start giving children, after something, they have intersuspicion. They have a kind of problem in the intestine rolled over inside there by itself, and there were some complications over there. So we need to understand the long-term complication and chronic toxicity and so on. We know about the acute stage, but the long-term level, I think we should understand. So there are so many different types of vaccine you can have, and you can have a whole cell vaccine, subunit vaccine, and newer vaccines. Whole cell is normally live or killed, and they take the virus and then kill it. Kill it means inactivate it so that the receptor cannot bind, the RNA cannot work, and so on. And you can also have a recombinant vaccine, so we can clone this antigen or artificially synthesize the protein in machines called peptide vaccine. We can clone this antigen like spike protein can be cloned in a yeast, E. coli, or any mammalian cells and produce it and then use it as a vaccine. And lately they're using DNA or RNA as a vaccine. What they use is the DNA, the gene encoding the virus, a part of the virus, the spike gene. So, for example, Moderna has 1273, means it is that RNA is used as the vaccine. So they will use it. So you can use a viral vector. Sometimes the gene has been put into a viral vector, and this may be a different virus, adenovirus, or some other chimpanzee adenovirus, and so on. So it can express the genes of SARS-CoV-2, and it doesn't cause the disease, but it will deliver the gene inside the cells. And DNA normally they will coat with some bilipid membrane. RNA also they coat with their bilipid membrane, and then they use it. So looking at the various platform, you have live attenuated vaccine, inactivated vaccine, viral vectored vaccine, and recombinant protein vaccine, and DNA vaccine, and RNA vaccine. Basically, essentially, they have either the component or a gene of the virus, and it has to go through various stages, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical trial, and so on. Now they have a fast track method of doing it, and most of the people try to target the spike protein because that's the entry, the gateway of the virus entering the cell. They use the spike gene to open the key of ACE2 receptor and enter. So this spike protein has been the central target for therapeutic and vaccine development. This is some of the characteristics or summary of the various vaccine platform. So they use RNA vaccine. There are 2 vaccines currently, won the race, and they are in the final stage of development. It's an RNA vaccine. And basically they inject the RNA that's encapsulated with the bilipid membrane. And you have to understand RNA is one of the very labile. People work with, molecular biologists work with RNA. They are very easy to degrade. So that's why they need a cold temperature as low as -70 degrees to transport those vaccines. DNA vaccines also quite easy to develop, and recombinant protein, viral vector-based vaccine, live attenuated vaccine, and inactivated vaccine. These are the different method of vaccine. I'll share the slide with you guys, and you can look at it how it is. So there are so many. We got it's overwhelming when you look at the numbers. I don't know who gives the correct number. There are so many vaccines currently being developed. At least according to the vaccine tracker, you have 20 vaccine in phase 1 trial, and 25 in phase 2, 12 in phase 3 trial. And I just look at randomly Moderna vaccine, which is currently shown to give more than 95% protection. I looked at the timeline. So they took the vaccine, and they have done some similar studies in other viruses, human coronavirus spike. They also worked on MERS, and also they worked on another MERS spike to avoid neutralization escape, and so on. They have done some past work between 2013 to 2019. Based on that, they have taken the this particular antigen as an RNA molecule. And when the outbreak happened in December, already from Wuhan, they have sequenced the virus. The gene was available. They've taken the gene of spike, this mRNA 1273. 1273 is the coding region of the spike gene. The whole is a big gene, actually. It's around 3,000 over bases. So they've taken it, and they start producing it, and they check the expression, and they vaccinated the mice, and they have done, they start preparing for the clinical trial, and they submitted, they have done the clinical trial, now they have the results. So there are some parts here that due to the fast tracking, the toxicity studies and immunological validation in GLP facilities, those has been taken from the previous experience. But in terms of long-term exposure to the RNA, nobody knows what will happen in your body. So these are some of the results. I just took it, and it's the Oxford AstraZeneca. It's a viral vector vaccine. Viral vector is this is a viral vector. They use an adenovirus, and where the gene for this one of the gene is there inside the virus. This adenovirus is a non-replicating virus. Okay, it cannot replicate. this virus will, when you give it to the individual, this adenovirus will, in fact, it has one receptor, it enters the cell, delivers the gene, but this virus cannot multiply. Okay, you have to understand. So that is the adenoviral vector vaccines. But there is one drawback in this is, let's say we do have some other adenovirus in our body. Adenovirus cause some respiratory diseases and other diseases in human. If they have a pre-existing antibody, it might neutralize this virus. That's why they use a chimpanzee virus. They don't use a human virus. They use a chimpanzee virus, and they use in this Oxford viral vector genetically modified virus. This virus cannot replicate, but it can enter the cell, deliver the payload, and causes the immunity. And they found that it causes around 90% effective. It has to be stored at cold temperature. Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech are essentially same. There is an RNA strand coated with a lipid biomembrane to protect it when it enters the cell. They are injectable. Some of them can have to inject up to 100 microgram or 40 microgram of RNA. You need to inject quite a high amount of RNA. And they say the effectivity is more than 90%, 95%, and it has to be stored at -70 or -20 degrees centigrade. So at this challenging time, there are so many things are happening. How they identified 90%, 95%? That's a question. How do they do it? They did I think most of them did a double-blind study. They give it to large number of people, and to check the efficiency, they decoded. And they have a placebo and the real vaccine. So they found that people who took the real vaccine in that outbreak occurring area, 95% of them are protected when they are given this vaccine. That's how they calculated. So this high percentage is actually a magic number. It's an unbelievable number. People work with vaccine. If you get 50, 60%, it's quite good. But this one is a quite high protection. But however, for RNA vaccines, we do not know the long-term effect. And communication in science is very important. And now it's kind of booming social media and WhatsApp and Twitter and Instagram, and so many ways the information is being bombarded. And as a scientist, as a student, as a responsible civilian of this planet, we should positively communicate and then stop the negative communication. That's very important. Science communication is very important. The whole world gone into science communication. I think many of your people now know what is virus. I think if you ask the same question 1 years ago, 1.5 years, 1 year ago, they don't know what is a virus. So many of the people in the world know what is a virus, know what is coronavirus. They know what is PCR, the molecular test, and social distancing. Some of the very complicated community medicine practice like social distancing, infection control, PPE, all those things actually came in. And most important thing is we need to spread what is the positive news. And like a lot of people come with a lot of speculation. Anti-vaxxers, now they say the RNA vaccine is going to make it into GMO and it is going to become change your genome. No, RNA just stays in the cytoplasm. It doesn't enter the nucleus. And it's a very labile molecule. It degrades very fast. So it doesn't integrate into your genome. But some of the chemical which is being used to modify the RNA can cause reaction, and those kind of things can happen. Long-term, as I mentioned earlier, long-term effect also we do not know. Some people say that this vaccine is going to cost you. And for example, there's a small island nation called Samoa, where these anti-vaxxers created a thing that you don't take measles vaccines, MMR vaccines. And there was an outbreak of measles, hundreds of children died there. So, so the hoax and all kind of these things have to be very carefully handled. They will send a very credible information. They say this scientist is telling this vaccine is not good and this. Please verify. Google, you can always check. You can put a word hoax and then search and then see if it is something which is very prominently wrong. Please stop the spread of those wrong information. Science communication is very important. Opportunities in COVID is amazing. And let's not talk about the bad side of the COVID. And we have we have people lost job and businesses are lost. Let's not talk about it. A lot of new opportunities are there. You have to equip yourself. This is one example of how students learn how to do education via online, how to teach. It's also one of the business opportunity for them. So you learn all those things. Actually, as a lecturer in AIMST University, many of us just transformed ourselves and then we went online. So we compare our teaching modality 1 year ago. We are 360-degree different. So we have to learn new things and then reskill ourselves, retool ourselves, and then survive in this COVID era. Looking at the molecular biology opportunities, you can develop diagnostic kit. There's acute shortage of diagnostic kit, PCR kits. You don't need it. You don't have to make anything. This RNA can be synthesized. Ordered to a company, they'll synthesize the primer. All the reagents are commercially available, and you can make those. You don't have to even touch the virus to develop this diagnostic kit, but you need to test it with the patient sample before you market the kit. So innovative diagnostic kit, sensors can be developed, and PPE like a shield you can develop, positive pressure shield, and you can develop type of gloves or whatever, hand sanitizer formulation. So these are a lot of business opportunities are there in this COVID era. So enablers, you have this. China did a wonderful thing. They published the genome of the SARS-CoV-2 in the NCBI pub in the gene bank. So that facilitated the development of the vaccines, RNA vaccines and DNA vaccines, and primer sequence being available in CDC. You just get the primer sequence and develop your RT-PCR kit. So enable the resources, plenty of resources are available. We can develop vaccine. I know there are a lot of molecular biologists there in the country, the world, and some of them are professors, and some of them have done a lot of work. Why not everyone roll the sleeves and work? The vaccine developed by companies are not enough. The diagnostic produced by the companies are not enough. Let's be honest. We call ourselves as a scientist. Everyone put the effort, and don't wait for the funding. I think the institution should support who is doing it. So small amount. Actually, you have most of the places have enough infrastructure. We can work in all the three pillars: developing drug, developing vaccine, developing diagnostic. We might not hit an answer now, but you might be able to get ready for the next bad. If at all there's another virus coming inside, another kind of rare disease coming inside, we can prepare ourselves. Diagnostics, we can develop antigen-based, antibody-based. Therapeutics, new drugs can be synthesized. I know there are a lot of chemists there. Actually, at AIMST University, we got a grant on FRGS. We collaborate with the chemists, and we are trying to develop some certain drugs. And we are, when you develop a drug, we always get scared. You have to touch the virus or not. No, you just test on animal viruses first. We work on IBV virus or porcine virus first. Then once it is done, you can always collaborate with other people and develop the drug against this virus. And like simple research, like how long the virus stays in the place, and all kind of in outer areas, how long the virus survives. So many basic fundamental research can be done. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who can do this research. And developing a mask, different type of mask, mask having antiviral activity, mask having a proper, how to check the efficiency of the mask, and developing a sanitizers and so on. So that is my frustration about scientists all over the world. I think everyone should work. Don't wait for the X country coming up, one person working, and just believe in your scientists, believe in your capability, and work towards finding a solution which the whole humanity is facing. So you have to be resilient. We cannot just sit passive, stay at home, and then see that somebody else will develop something. So there was, in Germany, there was a group of people and ministry, they have come up with certain things. They come up with 5 pillars. One, they say people must be at the heart of a green and resilient recovery. government must ramp up their investment in the sustainable recovery. Building resilience is the key for effective recovery, and global crisis, if one country is affected, it's all interlinked, you know. Don't think that, okay, our country is safe and we are fine. You also think about other country. If our neighboring countries are affected and we also get indirectly affected, we all are humans, we all are relatives. So we have to make sure that it's a collective recovery happens. If a disease is contained in your own country, but you can't even go to other country. So you have to make sure that everyone is protected, and the cooperation, solidarity are very critical. So building an inclusive, green, and resilient recovery is an urgent and shared global challenge. That is what we should go towards it. So in summary, I just like to say, in addition to staying safe, be supportive, whatever you can contribute. You have to be very careful and alert and kind. That's very important. A lot of people lost job, and so many things are happening, and we have to be kind, and as a whole global humanity, and I think we should be able to survive this pandemic. And thank you very much for this whole UFO team. Congratulations to all of you. And I think I shared my view. This is all my personal view. And so you have to take whatever I told you with a pinch of salt. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Ravi, for a wonderful talk. The last message was very, very important because most of the participants are students, and we are live on YouTube. Thank you very much for creating positivity. I like it because most of people are talking negative things, and what you highlighted is very, very important. Okay, so before we start the second presentation, we'll have a Q&A. Prof, we have some questions, so I'll just highlight one by one. I think it's our student, Arwin. He's asking, in future, if we are free from COVID-19, can we go back to old normal? Prof, what do you think?
The way things are happening now, until we are comfortable with the current pandemic management, I think we have to use the current normal as a normal. So that's all normal. It will take some time to, as I mentioned to you, everyone work in a sustainable manner and find a solution for the problem. I think we had last 12 months, you know, I think we have so many population of scientists, and everyone wait for somebody else to come up. People are waiting for business opportunities. I think move away the business. If everyone collectively work, I think we can find a solution to it, and we can go back to the old normal. Until we get a sustainable solutions, the current normal is going to be the normal.
Okay, thank you, Prof. The second question is also from student, our student Pong. She's saying, I have a funny question. Is it possible that virus is able to wipe out human population and take over the world if humans are unable to control them?
Actually, we have to understand the biology. The virus also evolved, and we also evolved, you know. We are a higher organism than a virus. Mm-hmm. And so I think we will survive. You know, the Darwin's theory is survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
So whoever survives, that particular species will survive.
Okay, next question, Prof, is also, I think, maybe student Aku. Prof, could you please explain about viable and not viable virus in COVID-19 RT-PCR assay reports?
Yeah, that's very important. Coming to the viable and non-viable, it's very difficult to do a viable and non-viable. Viable and non-viable, you have to use a cell culture. You have to infect a cell culture and then see that particular sample is viable or not. It will take at least a week time to confirm. As I mentioned to you, by molecular method, you have to look at the CT, cycle threshold, by RT-PCR, real-time PCR. if the cycle threshold is that indirectly tell you the viral load basically. And if the viral load is less, maybe the infection is not actually a virus infecting. Maybe it has been sticking into the nasal area, not causing a disease. We do have our own mucosal immune system. They are secretory antibodies, mostly IgA antibodies, secretes in the nose and also the respiratory mouth, saliva, and respiratory tract. And they do have some way to neutralize the virus. So it's very tricky answer to say, but the diagnostic criteria are established by the bodies, the ministries, and the CDC and WHO. We are obliged to follow that. However, if you ask me a straight answer to your question, we have to look at the viral load very carefully. And it's always a good practice to repeat the test. Repeat the test and correlate with the clinical symptoms. That will give you a clear answer. Or there's also other way you can look at the antibody level. It means it tells you that you have been exposed to the virus before. You can also look at the viral antigen. It tells you an active infection. So either we can correlate with the clinical symptoms, or we correlate with the existing antibody or antigen, and that will tell you, confirm it. But these false positives are quite rare, but better be safe. Better be safe. And if you find something there, better to self-quarantine, self-isolate for self-quarantine that for some time, so we can prevent the spread of the disease.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Another question we have is from Tiwar. Question is, a lot of animals are not affected by the SARS virus, I mean this COVID-19, as compared to the humans. So is it because of their antibodies against the virus are better than humans, or what do you think as a virologist?
As we know that the animal virus and human virus, they share certain percentage of similarity. It can vary between 35% in birds to bad coronavirus, which is 90 over similarity. That is the percentage similarity. And number two, possibly the animals already have some kind of inbuilt protection. But the real reason could be the receptor present in the animal. Okay, the ACE receptor, not only ACE receptor, this virus also can bind to some other receptors in animal. So possibly those animals do not have the receptor that our virus can bind, that SARS-CoV-2 can bind. That's why the animals are not getting it. However, I mentioned about mink outbreak in Denmark, and that is that virus, our virus, the SARS-CoV-2 can bind to that virus more effectively, and they got a mutation, and that also that virus is known to infect a human. So the zoonotic is infecting the animal. So it depends on the receptor. If the receptors are compatible, that will infect the animals.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Now, is there any question from the audience? Please, still we have some time. If you have any questions, please post in the chat, clarify your doubts. It's better to learn from the expert. So, Prof, while waiting for any other question, I have a couple of questions. So because in your talk, I think you have nicely mentioned that only multinational companies are involved in drug development, and it's not enough because everybody is waiting desperately. So based on your calculation, how you think, how long it will take to vaccinate everybody on this planet? It's a little bit tricky question, but as a virologist, what do you think of?
See, our world population is almost, I think, 8 billion. 7 billion plus, and you need at least 2 doses. So you need like 16 billion doses, and you have to think about the cold chain, and the bottom billion, the one who lives with less than $1 a day, the more than 1 billion population. So this cold chain vaccine severely required cold chain vaccine like -70, -20, I don't think it will reach there. So unless everyone works and develop vaccine that is sustainable, which is cold chain free, which is non-invasive, not injected, but oral delivery. Actually, these are some of the criteria by WHO. You should develop a vaccine. If at all you want to develop a sustainable vaccine, it should be less than $1 a dose. It should have a cold chain. It should be orally administered. It should be one dose or less, not more than one dose. So those will be practically possible to deliver everywhere. The current vaccine development platform, when I look at it, almost all of them require cold chain. So there may be an element of disparity. Some of them will get, the rich might get better, but many of these people, the frontliners definitely will get. And the governments are, many governments are running up and then booking the vaccine. So there are a lot of organization has been established to make sure that inequality is prevented. But vaccines are coming up. So now it is 11 November, already December. I think I'm very positive. By January, I think it should slowly roll out and everyone will get, depends on the affordability and access.
Okay, thank you, Prof. My second question is because global community is talking about Asian countries has done a wonderful job as compared to Western countries. So sometimes I think same thing. Other people, those are in developing worlds, are thinking. So as a virologist, Prof, science behind it. I'm not sure. So would you please elaborate? How the global situation is like this. We Asians are more immune, or what are the factors behind this? Why Asian countries have done well as compared to Western world, Prof? What do you think, Prof?
It could be the underlying systemic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and the age. And if you look at the population pyramid, Asians have the youngest population, younger population. And like France, Japan is doing very well actually. So the population age could be a factor, the population immunity could be a factor, the population's other diseases, systemic diseases could be a factor. And Asians are mostly exposed to, we tend to rear chicken, cat and dogs and animals, possibly. I don't know, I have not come across any studies that possibly that is also giving some kind of exposure to the animal coronavirus gives some kind of immunity to the Asian population. And there are some studies, some indirect evidences. For example, the biggest slum in India, in Mumbai, Dharavi, and there was an outbreak, but it contained a SARS-CoV virus, and it didn't cause much. The immune system is quite good. People live in the slum. So sometimes dirty is good,
Yeah. So very good insights, Prof. Thank you very much for sharing. So just let me check any other question in the chat room. Prof, there are another two questions. In case of reinfection, is that the protein will have mild symptoms? Sorry, patient will have mild symptoms as they develop the antibodies during the previous infection. Prof.
Yeah, we do not know there is going to be a subclinical infection. Okay, let's say a patient had an infection before, and they might have a subclinical infection. That depends on the immunity and so on. The same thing happens in the viral. When you vaccinate the people, we do not know it's going to give 100% protection, or it's going to have a protection to save the patient, but the patient have a subclinical infection. That actually is not known. We do not know exactly the answer for that.
Another question we have, Prof, is I guess our student Chai. She's asking, if coronavirus is such an infectious disease and mutates very rapidly, is live and attenuated vaccine will be safe to use?
Live attenuated vaccine. Actually, this virus does mutate. Actually, it does mutate, but it has some mutation in the receptor binding sites. Live attenuated vaccine, we have to check the infectivity of that particular virus very carefully. And I think so far I'm not sure any live attenuated vaccines are. Normally live attenuated vaccine is basically they knock out some of the virulent genes in the virus and develop. Most of the vaccine develop either DNA, nucleic acid vaccines or inactivated virus or viral vectored vaccines. So the antigen is delivered through another virus. You know, gene therapy, right? So we put the desired gene in the virus, adenovirus or lentivirus, and then we transfer the gene. So that's a similar mechanism they're following for this particular viral delivery of vaccine. But it depends on the mutation rate of the particular virus. That's what I can say. I have no experience in developing attenuated viral vector. The classical attenuated viral vaccines are the polio vaccines. So I happen to work with Professor Jacob John team in CMC Vellore. I personally cultured the oral polio vaccine in monkey kidney cell, primary cell culture. So basically, they will, the way they develop attenuated vaccine is they culture in another species cell line multiple times, so it doesn't become, it'll lose its virulence. And they check the virulence on a human cell line, and then they use the attenuated virus as a vaccine. But it has to be checked very carefully, and there are a lot of previous experience, like rotavirus, as I mentioned before. It was proven to be safe and it has passed all clinical trial, but later when it was implemented, it caused intersuspicion and other complication in children. So the long-term effect of the vaccine has to be proved. That's very important.
Prof, we have one more interesting question. This one I got a message from Tiwar, I guess possibly student, our student. Student is saying, because nowadays when the scientists are working hard to make the vaccine and medications for this COVID-19, but in Indian community, the elderly people are advising, asking to use the neem and turmeric, etc., during this time. So a student want to know, is that effective for this pandemic to make sure that we will not get infected, and especially burning the neem leaves or plant, parts, and turmeric, and exposing ourselves to the smoke of the neem and turmeric to kill the virus. So what do you think, Prof?
That's what I've been telling the scientific community and people. I know a lot of claims are there, like neem, by inherently it has antiviral activity to other viruses. And turmeric is a potential anti-inflammatory compound. It has, so obviously it is logically correct. Logically it has an antiviral activity, it has an anti-inflammatory activity, combination of neem and neem that has azadirachtin, and then turmeric also has that curcumin that has an anti-inflammatory activity. But why can't we scientists can test it experimentally on other coronavirus? A lot of coronavirus, the porcine coronavirus, we have a bird coronavirus, we have a veterinary institute that culture it daily, isolating them and so on. And we can test it and experimentally prove, and then come up with the formulation, and you start a business. That's what I'm telling you. So it is working, means evidence-based. But if it is validated by experiment and you follow the trials, and then you can develop into a product. And And I think the whole India is following that. A lot of people are using it, and it is working. But it has to be backed by a proper systematic trials and experiments.
Okay, thank you, Prof. We are running out of time. So last call, I want to give the opportunity to all the participants, those are in virtual room. So if you have any question, just unmute yourself and you can ask question directly to Professor Ravi. Take this opportunity to clarify your doubts. So I will just wait for a few moments. Just unmute yourself and you can ask a question. Participants, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question.
Dr. Subhas, check that the second speaker is ready or not, so we can wait.
Yeah. He's in the virtual room. I have made him co-host, so he's ready. So
Okay.
just last 2 minutes. So anybody want to ask a question to Professor Ravi? We are going to start our second talk in a few moments. So if anybody have a question, just unmute and you can ask question. So if there are no any question, I assume since there is no response, I assume that there are no any further questions. So it was a wonderful Q&A session. Prof, thank you very much for sharing your valuable insights and highlighting important points, which is very, very critical in this difficult and challenging situation. So thank you very much for your wonderful talk. So ladies and gentlemen, let's proceed to our next talk. We have a specially invited speaker from Belgium, and he's going to talk on very, very interesting topic. Dr. John, you are in the virtual room, right? I made you co-host. Are you ready, Dr. Jan? Dr. Jan, you are able to, maybe you can unmute yourself. Okay, so all the participants, so before he start his presentation, I just want to highlight a few things about Dr. Jan, because just now we have seen different elements about the vaccine, and now we are going to start the second talk. So positivity is very, very important. Lots of opportunities are coming up, but for discussion purpose, we have to also accept the reality, even though we should not think negatively, because in our daily life, we have started experiencing the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Because COVID-19 pandemic has significantly disturbed the demand and supply ecosystem across the globe, and everybody is feeling it. So it is expected that this ongoing coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, will have long-lasting economic impact in most of the sectors, including education industry. So our second speaker is going to share with us his insights and going to share valuable information about the economic impact of COVID-19. Topic is very timely, it's very, very important. And the speaker is well known for his expertise, so we'll get benefited. So before he starts his talk, I will just introduce Dr. Jan. Dr. Jan Maschot. He is a postdoctoral researcher at the Social and Economic Geography Research Group, which focuses on all social and economic activities and development on the Earth's surface. After obtaining his PhD in physics, Dr. Jan became a risk manager at bank insurance company KBC Group. He has worked at the headquarters of the European Bank for 5 years. He was responsible for the timely delivery of reports to the supervisors and senior management of the bank. He has also worked as a math teacher. He is a corporate trainer. He conducts training programs for various banks, fintech, non-financial companies, as well as various government agencies. He has also written one book and published it. It's quite popular. He has written, he's author of that book, Bankers Are People Too. So this book is about the financial services industry, and it reflects his wide experience. So his research is highly focused on financial networks and innovations. So with this little bit background, I would like to welcome Dr. Jan to this webinar on behalf of organizing committee, on behalf of AIMST University. Dr. Jan, I welcome you, and I turn it to your side. So floor is yours. You may start, Dr. Jan. Over to you. Dr. Jan,
I think the audio.
he's a co-host. You just unmute yourself and you can start, Dr. Jan. We cannot hear Dr. Jan. I think some audio system, maybe we check your volume setting.
Yes, I've changed my microphone, so I hope it works now.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now we can hear clearly. So thank you very much. So please go ahead. We are happy to have you here. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, there was some technical issue. I have an external microphone, but it seems it works better only with the laptop. So again, thanks for the invitation and thanks for having me. I've been following Professor Ravi's talk for the past 20 minutes, so that was quite interesting also. So I'll try to share my slides that I've prepared. Okay. Let's see. Can you see my screen now or still just the video?
At the moment, we don't see your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So at the bottom, you see the share, that green icon. So just by going there, you can share your presentation. Is it open on the desktop?
It is open, yes.
Yeah.
So in my share screen, I have 3 options. One participant can share at the time.
No, that one. Don't click that upward arrow.
Okay.
Click that
Yeah.
arrow.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Now it should work. Yeah.
This should be better, right?
Yeah. So just put it on presentation mode and go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
That's better. Thank you.
Yeah.
Indeed, I'll try to talk for the coming time about the economic impact of COVID-19. And especially I want to highlight 3 things. The very peculiar nature of this virus and the impact it's having on the economy, because I will compare it to previous economic crises the world has experienced, but I'll show that this one has been very strange in its nature, and also the severity and how quickly it has had an impact on the entire world economy. Then I will delve into more details about the different economic consequences that it's having. And to end, I will speculate a bit on the longer term effects, even after vaccines are widely available. We can expect there will still be some long-term damage or at least consequences of the past year. So I'll do that at the end. Just a warning, perhaps. So my view will be mostly a European perspective because, of course, I know the economic situation best in Europe, although I also include the economic impact of the virus and the pandemic in other parts of the world. So just to start, yeah, we are at different parts of the Eurasian continent. So you can see the indicator here. So I'm in Belgium, in Western Europe. So if you look more in detail, we are between the big countries, France, Germany, and United Kingdom. And Professor Ravi talked about the difference of how Asian countries dealt with the pandemic, and that the West and Western Europe did quite badly. And unfortunately, I have to say that my own country of Belgium, among those bad countries, we did even worse than the others. Like to give you some idea of the magnitude. So we have a population of 11 million people. And so far, more than 15,000 people have died with COVID-19. So that's, if you look at it per capita, one of the very worst situations in the world. And maybe at the end of my talk, I can go into some reasons why the pandemic has been so bad, even in the European context. But I'd like to do my planned presentation first, and then we'll see how much time there's left to discuss the specific Belgian situation. As I mentioned, COVID-19 is a very peculiar shock because most global recessions are endogenous. And what is meant by that is that the economic troubles usually start within the economic system itself. So if we go back in time to some very large global recessions, we of course have the global financial crisis of 2008 and the years after. So there, the crisis started in the American housing market, and through the financial system and through debts, it spread around the world. Then more familiar for you, although your students will probably not have even been born, but the Asian financial crisis that started in 1997 was a very severe crisis that had its roots in foreign currency debt, and it infected a lot of countries from Indonesia, South Korea, and others. And then, of course, the probably most severe global depression in like world history probably was the Great Depression that started with the stock market crash in Wall Street in the year 1929, and that Great Depression lasted for about 10 years. So I'll use these three depressions or global recessions to frame the current COVID-19 problems, and also how policymakers and the economy has adapted compared to these previous economic problems. Just to be clear, so although most recessions are endogenous, that's not always the case. Like, for example, some problems start from external causes. So if it's natural, we typically think about severe earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, although these tend to be localized and not global problems. And another type of non-economic shock can have political causes. So of course wars. But if we think about, for example, the breakup of the Soviet Union, that had very severe economic consequences for Russia and the countries that were part of the Eastern Bloc. And another type of political induced economic shock were the oil crisis of the 1970s, where oil exporters decided to raise their prices or to stop exporting, which had very bad consequences around the world because energy became scarce, and it set in motion an inflationary spiral. So that's the typical external or exogenous shocks that can start or cause global recessions. So, but none of these were caused by a virus. Unlike now, the cause is a pandemic. So the COVID-19 and the disease and the coronavirus that causes the disease. And to go back to, or if you look back in history to see a disease that had such a large effect around the globe, I think we have to go back to the end of the First World War with the influenza pandemic. And it's sometimes known as the Spanish flu, although it didn't start in Spain, but due to some other reasons, it was called the Spanish flu. And so you can see that also then at the 1918, 1919, hospitals were flooded with patients. Now, I didn't see the entire presentation of Professor Ravi, but unlike the current COVID-19 disease, the influenza pandemic hurt especially young people, while the current pandemic is worse for older people. So that's one difference medically. But yeah, so but economically, we have to say that this is a very strange thing, and you live really in unprecedented times, because of course the 1918 influenza pandemic, it came at the end of the World War. And so there were already very heavy disruptions to the normal economy. So it's hard to tell exactly like how devastating the influenza pandemic was economically. Also for the obvious fact that there weren't, or like the economic data that we have today, there was nothing comparable then. So now there are so many economists and agencies covering the economy, but a century ago that didn't exist. So it's hard to tell exactly how severe the economic impact was. Although of course people didn't have any, like they couldn't look forward to a vaccine. So the pandemic more or less ran its course, although some regions managed to deal with it better than others. So if we go to the current COVID-19 pandemic, yeah, I should give you some context. Like for us, from European perspective, the pandemic started in China, and we saw in January the images coming from Wuhan in China. So it was clear that this was something very severe. Like we saw the emergency hospital being built, the medical staff who were fully covered and dealing with patients. But it seemed like, oh, this is something far away, not something that's going to affect us either medically or economically. So the first steps that governments took was simply to ban direct travel between China and like Europe, or as you can see in my second example, the United States. So the idea was like, oh, the Chinese will deal with it. It's not going to come here. We're going to like monitor people who recently came from this region. But hopefully it will blow over. And yeah, the economic issues or discussions in January and February were more like, oh, the supply chains will be disrupted, and that when some Chinese cities are in lockdown, some products will not be able to be manufactured and shipped to the West. And that's it. That's going to be the only kind of impact this virus will have on the world economy. And then once it's under control in a couple of weeks, everything is back to normal. So that was the initial idea. So going back to January and February. However, so yeah, so like there were some people saying, like some medical people and others who were following Asia more closely, and they said like, oh yeah, but to be sure, like we cannot be certain that the virus is not yet here, so we should actually also ban like large gatherings, do like mandatory quarantines, those kind of measures. But there was a very large pushback from politicians and also from economic interest groups, that, oh yeah, but if you do that, like you ban large gatherings or concerts, or yeah, people going to the cinema everywhere, they can be in large crowds, that's going to have an economic impact, and that's bad for the economy, and we cannot do it for some uncertain risk. So that was still the idea, especially because at that time there were like maybe 2 or 3 diagnosed cases of COVID-19, and no people had died in Europe yet. So it still seemed something very foreign, and yeah, it's like more theoretic than something that's really has an impact on our way of living, or how we deal with our normal lives. However, these are the images from northern Italy, and then it became very clear very soon that the virus was much more widespread than people initially thought. And yeah, like in some regions, the medical system and hospitals were really overwhelmed. So the idea was then like, yeah, this is going literally exponentially. This is way too fast. In a couple of weeks or even days, the number of cases grows so much that we don't have the equipment to deal with all the patients. And of course, especially for older people, this is a quite deadly disease. And then, yeah, I don't know if you have seen the images, but like in the beginning of March, we saw the images from northern Italy, where there were like so many dead people, they couldn't bury everybody in a proper fashion, and they were like flooded with caskets. So then, of course, like no government could ignore this problem anymore, and the only solution that they saw was to copy what they saw from China, which was do a lockdown. So although different countries have different meanings, so I can describe the situation in Belgium. I think our lockdown was called around the middle of March, and what happened or what it meant in practice was so all the so-called non-essential shops were closed. So only pharmacies and the supermarkets and other shops that sell food were allowed to stay open. So all other shops, restaurants, cinemas, everything else was forced to shut down. In factories, people still were allowed to work in factories, but they were strongly advised to keep social distance, so to limit the spread of the virus. And also schools were closed because in normal classrooms there was no way to keep distance from pupils and students. So basically, the entire economy shut down, except for, of course, essential services. But so a large part of the population was forced to stay at home. And of course, like for example, for us, for the university, it meant that everybody had to work from home. So all office workers had to work from home, no longer go into the office and do everything from your own living room. So of course, if you shut down the economy, it has an obvious impact on economic production and consumption. But I have to stress that although these lockdowns were government imposed, like people talk a lot about Sweden or the United States, where the central government has not or has never mandated a full lockdown compared to, for example, France or Italy or Spain, where the lockdown was very severe. So if I think about France, people were not allowed to go farther away from their homes than, I'm not certain, but I think it was 1 or 2 kilometers. So you really had to stay very close. You were not allowed to go even to the next village or far away from home. While like in Sweden and the United States, these kind of measures were not forced. However, if you look at behavior, like this is a graph of travel through airports in the US, you can see like the darker bars are from 2019 for the same weeks, and 2020 in blue. And then you can see like starting at the beginning of March, that travel went down extremely fast. And so at the end of March and in April, daily number of passengers who took flights in the United States was down about 95% compared to normal. So basically only essential travel was occurring, no business flights, no tourism. So even if you don't have an official government sanctioned lockdown, in practice, individuals and companies, they decided themselves that this is too much of a risk, and nobody wants to go out voluntarily. because the uncertainty and the fear was too high. So the virus has an effect, even if the government doesn't tell you to stay at home. In practice, people did stay at home. So the economic impact of these so-called open countries was not that much less severe than for other countries. So that was travel behavior. Another consequence is industrial production. And here, this is a graph comparing the COVID-19 industrial production of the world. So it takes into account the major industrial centers. So China, Northern America, and Europe. And it shows you this year, so in light blue 2020, compared to the Great Depression of 1929 in purple, and then the reddish color is the global financial crisis. So of course, we are less than a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, but you can see, especially at the beginning, that the rate at which economic production dropped was faster than these previous global recessions. Although we also see in the graph that after like an initial downturn of 2 or 3 months, economic or industrial production has rebounded already. So for now, it looks as if the economy or the economic system is more robust compared to the recessions of the 2008 and 1929. So that's some cautiously optimistic news, although the rate at which production went down was terrifyingly fast. And some economists, if you read back what they wrote in March, they were really worried that this would be even worse than the global financial crisis, because things were happening so fast and it was so disruptive. But they forgot to take into account the adaptability of the economy. Another graph, this is from Eurostat, the European Statistical Agency, shows you international trade of the European Union with the rest of the world. So for the first 4 months of this year, and you can see that the exports from Europe to the United States and China in April went down extremely, like with an extreme amount. While if you look at the imports, they went down for all regions except for China. And of course, that's because China was hit first with the virus. So as I mentioned before, the lockdowns in China had this effect on industrial production, and then of course what China could export to Europe. However, in the month of April, imports from coming from China into Europe were higher than they were in January, and part of it is of course the fact that we needed a lot of personal protective equipment, so face masks, other like face shields, gear for doctors and nurses, and also people who were working from home needed a lot of laptops and that kind of equipment. And as you well know, a lot of semiconductor manufacturing and economics is in East Asia. So that explains why exports from China go up in April, and they continue to be quite high due to the fact that China has all this manufacturing capability. This is really something quite spectacular in terms of unemployment. So the graph from the front page of the New York Times shows you the number of people who became unemployed for a very long time series. So it goes back to the year 2000. And you can see like this is usually, it fluctuates, and you can see the spike of the global financial crisis around 2008. So linked to the American housing crisis. And then things seem to be improving steadily. So unemployment went down for years. And then in March and in April, the unemployment rate really like exploded because all kinds of shops and restaurants had to close. So what business owners did was fire their staff, because if they don't have any customers and don't have any revenue to save money, the first thing to save money was to fire the employees who couldn't work. Now, it should be said that the unemployment situation in the US is so severe, especially compared to Europe, because in Western Europe, we have the system of temporary unemployment, which means that when people or like when businesses have for some reason less work or less orders, they can not fire their employees but make them unemployed while they're still, so the government pays them some replacement wage, but they are not formally fired from their company. So they are still employees, but technically unemployed. So they cannot do their jobs, but they don't lose their jobs. And in Belgium, more than 1 million people were temporarily unemployed during the initial COVID-19 wave. But then once the lockdown ended, or when more shops could reopen, and the people could go back to work, the unemployment also dropped rather quickly. So that's the good news. But just to, if you look at the chart, it's really spectacular and unprecedented, although that word has been abused or used a lot. But in this case, it's not an exaggeration to say that this was really an unprecedented phenomenon, which is unlikely to reoccur in the coming years or even decades, I think. Now, although at the macro level, so looking at all or like Europe as a whole, we should also not forget that there are large differences between countries, and that basically has two reasons. One of it is like the severity of the virus itself, so and of the disease. So if you look at the graph, Spain had the worst shrinkage of its economic output. And that was because in the second quarter, for which this graph is made, Spain had a lot of COVID-19 cases, and they imposed very strict lockdown. So of course, if you have a very strict lockdown, people cannot go to work and cannot consume. And the second reason why there's such a big difference between countries is because of the nature of their economy. So, for example, Spain and France and Greece are countries with a large sector based on tourism. But if there are no airplanes flying towards them, or if governments say that people cannot go on holiday, that's going to have a large impact. While on the other hand, countries like Germany have a more industrial economy, and taking into account distancing measures, like people could at least still work at factories. So that's one of the reasons, or these are the two reasons. So the severity of the virus and the lockdowns, and the second one is the nature of the economy. So that explains why even within Europe we see such large differences of economic losses. An other impact, not really about the macroeconomy, but very individually on people's lives, is the consumption and income of people. So again, just like the unemployment graph in the United States, we see a very wild swings in 2020 related to COVID-19 on the economy. So what you can see here are, so maybe we should start with the light blue, which is the disposable income. So you can see that while usually income is growing quite modestly, now it went negative, and even worse than, as you can see, in 2009. So 2009 was still a consequence of the global financial crisis. Now the income loss was higher, and that's mainly related to people who, so if you cannot work, you get these unemployment benefits, but these unemployment benefits, they don't fully cover your normal wages. And then there are, of course, also people like self-employed people who cannot take or don't have the right to an unemployment benefit. Although it should be said that most governments try to give some compensation for people's loss of income, but usually it's not enough to make up for the entire loss of their income. So that explains the light blue loss of disposable income. And very counterintuitively, the savings rate went up instead of down. So usually if you have less income, you're going to use your savings to keep on buying necessities and other consumption goods. So how is it possible that the saving rate goes up so people can save more if their income goes down? That's because of the consumption. So of course, if restaurants are closed and all non-essential shops, if you were planning to buy things, you're not able to. Like maybe you can buy some things online, But if you are planning to have dinner every night at the restaurant, you can't. If you were planning to buy flowers or whatever, like furniture, you can't, because all of the shops had to close. So that explains how people were forced to save more. And of course, we cannot forget that for a lot of people, like for me, for example, if you work at university, your wages are fixed. So it's not because you have to work from home that you lose your income. You keep on getting your monthly paycheck. And that's not just for people at university, but also, yeah, most people who work for the government. So teachers, public servants, police, and also in a lot of office jobs. So people who do administration, they also kept their normal wages. But this is something very strange, unless you, of course, know the details. But like students of economics looking back within 50 years, when they see this graph in the textbook, they will be very surprised that how can your income go down and your saving go up? And even more spectacularly, although I don't have a chart for it, is in the United States, the disposable income also went up. So, and what explains that is because the administration in the United States, they gave everybody like a check. I'm not certain anymore the exact amount, but I think it was about like $1,000 per week, which is quite a lot. And so some people manage, like especially people who usually have a low income, even manage to save some money or pay down debt, thanks to the government program in the United States. Although we should also not forget that this is like for so-called rich countries. So of course, in a lot of parts of the world, governments don't have the capacity, or there's no social security system. And so that means, like, if there's a forced lockdown and you lose your income, there's not much to replace it. So people try to ignore the lockdown or to get income in some way, and contribute to the spread of the virus. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, that this is a very European or Western perspective. And yeah, it's not something that is generally true for the rest of the world. So we have to be a bit careful not to overinterpret this as something that's true globally. So, but still, it's a very remarkable phenomenon, or a very strange recession. And maybe one of the things that that can explain, like, why governments were so generous, relatively speaking, like why so because a lot of politicians talk about the dangers of government debt, and that the government cannot spend too much. But here it was clear that this is very sudden and it's nobody's fault, and we have to deal with this virus. So that may be one of the reasons why they were quite fast to give support to individuals and also to businesses even. So as I already mentioned, of course, it has an impact on the finances of the government. So this graph shows for some major economic regions the government deficit. So it means that the government spends more than it brings in tax revenue. So there are two aspects of this ratio. So it looks at the government deficit relative to gross domestic product. So GDP is like a measure of the size of the economy and economic production. So obviously GDP or economic production went down, while the deficit went up a lot, because at the one hand, if there's less economic, so if there are fewer sales and people don't earn their normal wages, also the related taxes will go down. So there was less tax revenue, more government spending. So it has a very large effect on government finances. So you can see that even compared to, again, 2009 and the global financial crisis, the deficit was larger this time than in 2009. And this is one of my my last slides. So again, we shouldn't forget about the rest of the world. This is a graph of the World Bank, where they estimate the effect of the coronavirus on global extreme poverty. So the previous years, so the dark black graph, the extreme poverty rate globally was going down. However, due to the economic disruptions of the pandemic, they project that global poverty will go up again, and so we as a world will lose a couple of years of progress on reducing extreme poverty. So this is something that we cannot forget, that there's more to the world than just us. And if you look into detail, this is again from the same study of the World Bank. You can see like what regions are affected the most for poverty. It's mainly South Asia and also Sub-Saharan Africa. So these are the regions where there are a lot of people in poverty. And so in absolute numbers, the researchers of the World Bank project that is going to push about 100 million people, depending on the scenario and the metric you use to define extreme poverty, but so many people more into extreme poverty. So let's hope the vaccinations will reach every part of the globe, and also make sure that the economy can work again, so that we can leave this behind. So yeah, again, just to show you some idea about the impact. So global poverty, so the higher the bar, the worse it is. And you can see they compare this to the Asian financial crisis that started in 1997. So in every scenario, the baseline and the downside scenario, the current effect on global poverty is much worse than the Asian financial crisis. Now, I wanted to say something about the so-called choice between health and the economy. So if you remember at the beginning of my talk, I mentioned some politicians were very reluctant to shut down large gatherings and travel, because they were afraid that or they thought they had to prioritize the economy to the health crisis. However, now that we have a lot of data, we see that this was really a false choice, because in general, so at the x-axis, you see the change in GDP, so the size of the economy. And at the y-axis is the number of COVID deaths. And you can see a really correlation that the fewer deaths they are, the better the economy has performed. So the message was contain the virus, and then in general, the economy will be less affected. And then, yeah, you can see like my own country of Belgium that we did very, very badly, both in terms of debt and also economically. So people who thought that they were going to help businesses and help the economy by staying open, yeah, they didn't do any of their goals. So it was a bad decision for the economy, and even worse, of course, for all the people who got sick and the people who died from the virus. So yeah, I don't know how much time I have left, but maybe in the last couple of minutes, I would like to speculate about the longer term effects. So we have been hearing positive news about the vaccines, and ultimately it's going to be the scientists and the medical researchers who will save us, so to speak. However, just like people have been talking about the long COVID and the fact that if you had the disease, then in some cases you will have longer term health effects, or like yeah, maybe you will have problems with your lungs or with your heart. Can we expect something similar for the economy as a whole? So it could be that if we look in 2022, so I guess like next year will be people get vaccinated, and hopefully by the end of next year, like there will not be any more outbreaks, and it's going to be maybe some small cases, but nothing systemic like we know now. So will it be, if you look back economically, that it's as if this year has never happened? So this is a projection of some European researchers, and it shows you the different possible scenarios. So the economy was on a normal growing trend, and then in reality we had in 2020 this very severe shock. But the question is, like, how is the economy going to recover in the long term? So it's possible that the economy will go back to its previous trend line, or maybe it's going to grow at the previous rate but at a lower level, or in the worst case it's going to grow eventually, but it's going to take years and years to even be at the same level of GDP than we reached in 2019. So like what they call the falling behind scenario, in that case, we wouldn't be at the same level of economic output until 2026. So a very long time. And what could cause such a bad outcome where it takes a very long time to recover economically? The obvious first one is when businesses go bankrupt. So for now, if you look at the statistics, there have not been that many bankruptcies yet. Partly it's because of government support. So a lot of businesses got the permission not to pay taxes. And there were supporting measures. However, some businesses will have lost so much money that they cannot recover. like it will not be profitable anymore to keep on going. So if they go out of business, if they go bankrupt, it's going to take some time for new businesses to grow and for the employees to be retrained into other jobs. So that's first obvious problem for the economy in the long run. Like if there are a lot of businesses going bankrupt and a lot of people who are unemployed, it takes some time to regrow new businesses. Another problem that we cannot forget about is schools. So as I mentioned before, some pupils were not able to go to school, and although schools try to do distance learning, so through the computer, it's not the same. And there have been several reports that the amount of things that that students learned while they were not physically in school has been very low. So in the long run, it could have an adverse effect on schooling and on training and on productivity. And then finally, another negative consequence, or yeah, actually two, like government debt. So government spends a lot of money now to help the economy, but in the long term, it could have negative consequences. Now, yeah, I'm not going to go too much into detail. Like for some countries like the United States, this is more a political problem, but still, it's a fact that the government debt will be much higher in the coming years than it was in 2019. And then my final negative point is like possible health effects that can have negative consequences on the economy. So people, yeah, we don't know because it's a new virus, like in the long run, like, is it going to affect people? Like, are they going to be less productive or not able to work? And I also mentioned mental health effects. So for some people, they might have a depression or like become addicted, or if they were already having problems with alcoholism or other substance abuse, the lockdowns and the economic situation could make them worse. Now, maybe to end with a more positive note, economically, working from home has forced people to become more familiar with digital technology, and so we've seen a really fast growth of people working from home, spending less time commuting, wasting less time and more time with their families, or even longer at work because you don't have the long commute. And we also saw a rise, at least here in Belgium, of people doing electronic payments. So people moving away from cash to digital forms of payments. So it's estimated that the changes that we went through have accelerated technological adoption with a couple of years. So also businesses that were still hesitating to implement like digitalization projects, they were forced to do them, and maybe in the long run this will pay off. So I think that was my my final slide. So again, I'm very pleased that I had the opportunity to talk to you about this topic of the economic impact of COVID-19. And I think there is time, so if you have questions, please feel free to ask me. So I'm going to stop my.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Jan. It was really insightful talk to get some ideas about how the COVID-19 is having an impact from a European perspective. So we will have Q&A. Let me check any question in the chat room. There is one comment from Professor Ravi. He's saying, Dr. Jan, excellent presentation on economic impact of COVID-19. Good to see some positive projections in future. So any questions? While waiting for other questions, maybe I'll ask a couple of questions, Dr. Jan. So because you have given a wonderful insights about the economic impact from European perspective. So you have a lots of experience in banking and economics. So would you like to elaborate a little bit on Asian economy?
Yeah, so of course it's not my field of expertise, but what is obvious to me is that Asian economies or Asian countries were much better able to control the virus itself. And as I showed in one of the last slides, if you are able to control the spread of the virus, you are also able to open much of the economy. So bars, restaurants, all of those parts of the economy are able to operate normally, or at least more normal than here in Europe. And that has a large positive impact on the economy. Like I remember seeing pictures from Wuhan from this summer, where people were able to attend a concert, while here in Europe, there were no concerts during the summer. So that has an obvious, very positive effect on Asian economies. And for the rest, I think also the fact that so much manufacturing is based in Asia also means that that if the United States and Europe have a large demand, for example, for medical equipment, then it's actually a boost to the economy. Although on the other hand, we cannot forget, like 2020 was supposed to be the year of the Olympics in Japan. Of course, that's one large event that didn't take place. So even if you managed to keep the virus under control, which you did very well, you still have the negative spillover impact of the fact that because the rest of the world does not contain the virus, there are less opportunities for some exports like tourism and also like indirect effects. Another maybe positive impact in terms of economics for Asia, like most Asian countries are importers of crude oil. Of course, because there was much lower demand for oil, because people traveled less, so there was less air travel, and also people driving cars. The oil price went down. So in that sense, it's also a positive effect on countries that import oil. So I think those are some impacts on Asian economies. But again, I think just like in Europe, there will be large differences between nations. So I am not that familiar with Malaysia. But I cannot tell you from my perspective, like how it went, or if you already recovered or still face some problems now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jan. So I have one more question, is because if you see the movement of the students from one country to another country or one continent to another continent for education purpose, it's really disturbed, or we can say hampered, because of international travel ban. So as a banker or as an expert, what do you think, I mean, about the education industry and the way forward, Dr. Jan?
Yeah, so I actually have some personal experience with that because at Ghent University in the geography department, there are several PhD students from China. And for them, it had a very large personal effect because in January and February, they were not allowed to move or like to visit their family in China because like air travel was disrupted for a long time. And then of course, then the virus hit Europe, and then again they were not able to move either from China to Europe or vice versa. In terms of economics, I think it kind of depends on the funding of the universities, of course, but it's mostly a personal problem. For us as researchers, we have the advantage that like right now I'm speaking to you from my laptop. Like in the past, we would have like been more spontaneous, like we need to meet in person, or like this summer there were no conferences, while usually we go meet at in person at conferences at some destination. So I think as knowledge workers, we are able to adapt more easily than some other sectors. Although, of course, even though we have all of these communication methods, I think being able to speak directly still has its advantages. So I hope that maybe with the rollout of the vaccines, and with hopefully keeping the virus under control with non-medical measures, then hopefully we will be able to have like these in-person meetings and teaching again. Although I hope that universities will also be able, or the lessons that they learned from online learning and taping courses, that should also have a positive effect in the long run. That people or like professors, they make a really good presentation once, and then maybe the year after, instead of doing everything in the classroom, they can reuse some of the courses that they gave, and then do more in-person training, or if students have questions that they can maybe prepare at home, look at the lecture, and then come into the classroom or into the university and ask in-depth questions, and go from there. So hopefully this will also have a positive impact on how we operate as universities.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jan. So there is one more question from audience. I think a student, Ku. Question is, Dr. Jan, would you mind to share the research projects you are currently undertaking now or working on? Do you have any suggestions for students to what type of research titles we should have in the current scenario?
Yeah. So maybe I should say that the work I've been doing on the economic impact of COVID-19 is, of course, not directly related to my official research program because it was so unexpected, but I had a lot of background, so I could make some simulations and calculate scenarios of what was going to happen. And if I read back what I wrote in March and April, it was quite good, if I say it myself, Now, my official research program deals with networks of banks and European banking centers. So what I study specifically is I look at cities which have a high concentration of banks, and I look at the relations between them. Like, yeah, close to you, the most famous financial center is Singapore. And then in the region, you also have Hong Kong, for example. If we look within Europe, the largest banking center is London. And then there are some other cities where there are also concentrations of banks. And so I try to look at the connections between them, and also see in what type of banking services they are specialized. And that's something that I've been working on for more than a year, and I'm writing 2 papers on those topics. So I think most of the people in the audience are scientists, but maybe, yeah, some are also economists. So as you mentioned, I'm a physicist myself by training, but then I got into the banking sector, and that's how I got here. But so you never know what career you will have with your degree.
Yeah, true. Thank you very much. We have one more question in chat room. So our one student, Chai, is asking Dr. Jan. I will just read the question for you, Dr. Jan. Dr. Jan, may we know that even both COVID-19 causing death rates and a reduction in GDP in Asian is the lowest, why the poverty population is still highest in the Asian region? I mean, this one is a question I just read, Dr. Jan, for you. So you want to comment anything on this one? It's a little bit complex question, you know.
Yeah. So is the question why the Western countries have more cases, or because I'm not sure I understand correctly?
I think it's a student want to know if you can highlight. I mean, in sense of the Asian countries are doing better in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and I mean, why? I mean, do you have any?
Yeah. Okay. No, that's actually a very good question. So if I look at the Belgian situation, like we were totally as a society or like we were totally unprepared. Like there were plans to deal with the global, for example, influenza pandemic, and the government here in Belgium, they had stocks with face masks and equipment that they bought maybe 10 years ago, but then it turned out when we needed them, they had destroyed them. So the stocks were gone. So that meant that doctors and people in nursing homes, that they had to do their jobs without protective equipment. And then, as Professor Ravi also mentioned, like we have this old population structure, like the population pyramid is not pyramid shaped. It has a large top, like of older people. And because a lot of very old people live in nursing homes, so once the virus was inside, a lot of people got infected. And because the mortality is very high at that age group, that also explains why there were so many people who died with COVID-19. And then another thing that I think that most or actually all Asian countries did much better was just screening incoming travelers. Like maybe it's due to the experience with SARS or whatever the reason, but yeah, just to illustrate how badly we were prepared, or yeah, that the government was not doing anything. So people, even while we were in lockdown in March, travelers coming from outside who landed at the airport, they could just enter the country without quarantine, without any testing. And they were just, they were asked to social distancing or to stay at home, but there was no nobody doing, making sure that they complied. While if I read statements like from Taiwan, for example, or from South Korea, I noticed that people who come in are forced to stay at a hotel room for like a week or 10 days to make sure that they are not infected and that they cannot infect other people. So while here there was very lax or actually no control, and so it meant that the virus could spread very quickly, and then it was as if it was everywhere. And then you should also know that now we are experiencing a second wave. So we had a very bad wave like in March and April, and then it took until maybe May until the shops were able to reopen and the schools. And then during the summer, it was the number of infections was quite limited, although not near zero, but maybe like 100 infections per day. And then, I don't know medically like what's the reason. Maybe it's due to the climate or the warmer weather or the fact that people are outside more. But we see now, like since September, when the schools reopened and people went back to work, cases were growing quite rapidly. And then the reason we have a second lockdown now is because at a certain point of time, we had 20,000 infections per day. So that was in October or November. So now we're going, the curve is going down again. But the question is like with Christmas coming next month, like if people are going to respect the fact that they are not allowed to visit each other. Like maybe you can visit one person, but usually like with Christmas, entire families come together. So if too many people will do that, it's going to boost the virus yet again. And it's possible that we will have yet another wave of the virus. So I'm not sure, like I don't have a crystal ball, but we'll see. Hopefully that now we will be able to deal with it better until there's plenty of vaccines available, and then hopefully they will be able to vaccinate first the older people and the people in hospitals, like the medical staff, and then give it to the rest of the population. And maybe just to add one more thing, like they are already preparing the population to take the vaccine, because there's no politician who wants to force everybody to take the vaccine. It will be voluntarily, but that means that it's possible that a significant fraction of the population will not take it, and then it will take longer to reach the so-called herd immunity. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jan. So there is one more, not really question, but some sort of comment. Dr. Jan, you are doing a wonderful job in your, Department of Geography. So Professor Ravi is asking for students' benefit in biotechnology, because he is a Dean of Faculty of Applied Sciences, where the Department of Biotechnology comes in. So he's asking how the benefit of biotechnology students and biomedical sciences students. What are the postgraduate opportunities available in your university with your perspective for Asian students? So maybe you can highlight opportunities available, Dr. Jan.
Well, I think at Ghent University and in Belgium in general, we have a quite large biotechnology industry and also opportunities for students. So we have a research institution called VIB, which is an institute for biotechnology. And there are in Ghent, there are some biotech firms that deal with, for example, the antibodies of llamas, and a lot of other technologies. And Belgium also has quite large pharmaceutical industry. So I think for Asians, there are Asian students and researchers, there are plenty of opportunities either to work on a PhD or even in industrial research. So I think, yeah, definitely Ghent University and Belgium in general, so in Brussels or in Leuven, there are a lot of opportunities for motivated students and researchers. So I think, yeah, probably if you look at the website of the university, or yeah, if you know, or if you contact professors of biotechnology and biochemistry directly, there should definitely be some opportunities there.
Yeah. Thank you very much, because we do have a faculty of business and management and other faculties. So, I mean, we also, from Department of Biotechnology, we send the students to other countries for industrial training, 3 months. We call it as industrial training. So from that context, I just want to ask, do you accept students from Asian countries or other countries for industrial training, short-term attachment, maybe 3 months or 4 months? Dr. Jan?
Well, of course, yeah, of course, I cannot speak on behalf of the university, but I do think it should be possible. I don't know if they do really these short exchanges, or but like when I did my PhD in physics, there were people that I knew in physics and chemistry from other countries who worked like half a year or 1 year at university. So yeah, I'm not sure about these very short projects or exchanges, but something similar should definitely exist. So I think if you look at in your own field of research, and if you maybe know a professor personally, or that you met at the conference, maybe if you make like personal contact and it fits in the research domain, I see no reason why it should not be possible. So I think if you are motivated and you try, and it's compatible on the type of research project, it should be possible.
Okay, there is one more question from our foundation school. So question is, are there any opportunities in doing interdisciplinary research at, in your university, biotechnology and education technology? Any possibilities you see, Dr. Jan?
Well, not that I personally know of, but again, I see no reason why it should not be possible. I think it really is going to depend on the person. If you have a good project and you find somebody who is willing to take you on, yeah, probably it should be possible.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Jan. So
yeah,
to the pleasure. Audience, yeah, thank you. Audience, now we are running out of time, so maybe one or two last questions we can allow. So what you can do, you can just unmute yourself, and maybe if you have any question to ask, you can ask directly in case if you don't want to type. So take the opportunity to just unmute, and you can directly have interaction with the first speaker or second speaker. So I will give some moments. You can just unmute and you can start talking.
Hello, Dr. Jan. I'm
Yeah.
Chai from AIMST University. Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Jan. From the question just now, maybe I'm not stated clearly inside the chat room. So from a perspective that I want to ask that even that our COVID-19 causing death rates and also our GDP growth, the reduction in Asian is the lowest, but why our poverty populations in Asian still the highest? That I look from your slides just now.
Dr. Jan, yeah. Are you clear, Dr. Jan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're asking why there are still there's still poor population, or because I don't. Yeah. But to grow the economy, it takes a lot of time. Like even if you have higher growth rates, if you start from a lower base scenario, it takes time to catch up, of course. So if the growth rates continue to be higher, at some point you will catch up and even overtake. Because there are precedents, like I think the GDP per capita of South Korea is higher than Italy already. So, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of time. As long as GDP grows annually at a higher rate in Malaysia and in other countries compared to Western Europe or to the United States, then at some point it just matches. At some point it will catch up and even overtake. Of course, the problem is that the closer that you get to the so-called economic frontier, or like the most productive sectors, the harder it gets to keep on growing at the same rate. Like China has done amazingly over the past 30 years, and it still has a lot of potential. But when the GDP per capita will be similar to that of the United States or of Germany, then it will also become harder and harder to keep on growing at the same rate, because then everything can no longer come from keeping up with or implementing like the best technologies. Then you have to increase the number of innovations as well. So I hope that explains the question. So it's basically a matter of time and keeping up the higher growth rates. I think that's the short answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Jan. So we do have many students in the virtual room from Faculty of Business and Management. So I want to ask students, please take the opportunity and ask the relevant questions, because some of the terms the common people may not understand. So as a business student, maybe you can ask some relevant questions to Dr. Jan. It's a wonderful opportunity, especially for students from Faculty of Business and Management. Any questions from students? Those are from Faculty of Business and Management. Just unmute yourself and you can ask the question. Don't hesitate to ask the question. In the organizing committee, we also have students from Faculty of Dentistry. So from Faculty of Dentistry, I mean, from that perspective, if you have any question, students from Faculty of Dentistry can also ask the questions. Basically, it's open to everybody. Anybody can unmute and can ask the question. So the basic idea is to have more interaction with the experts like Dr. Jan and Professor Ravi to get best out of their talk. So please feel free to ask question and get more information.
Dr. But maybe I will comment about Dr. Jan. I think it was a very nice presentation. I really enjoyed. Very nice and smooth, humble, down-to-earth presentation. I think we really appreciate your presentation and your valuable time in doing this. Maybe just for curiosity for other students, how you move from physics to geography. Now you're dealing, actually you're a true multidisciplinary person. How did you move from that? I also have a lot of interest in physics and geography. How did you move from that into here?
Yeah. So it's been quite a strange journey. So I did my PhD in 2011, and there were not many physics-related jobs, actually due to the Euro crisis.
Okay.
The global financial crisis, there was a lot of problems with the government debts in the Eurozone. And ironically, although there were not many industrial jobs, there were a lot of bank jobs. There was a lot of new regulation for banks, and it needed to be implemented. And one of my friends at the time, he was working at KBC, and he said like, I know you're interested in finance as well. Why don't you apply for a job there? And then, I worked there as a risk manager. And then after a couple of years, I left to work like as a self-employed consultant. So then I wrote my book, and I was working. I did like this year and a half also teaching math, like combining that with my consulting job. And then one of my friends who worked at Ghent University and who I actually knew because he read my book. He was working at the department where I'm working now, because he was working on a project about banking and financial institutions, and he wanted to change subjects more to transport geography. And so there was a vacancy, and he said like, don't you want to take over my project? And then it was quite at a good time, because I had, it was an interesting project for me, and I could combine it with my other jobs. And so that's how I got into the geography department. Although I have to admit that because I'm not a geographer, I had to do a lot of research also on the specific geography things, like the banking stuff I knew, of course, but then to deal with the city networks and all of the scientific literature, I had to spend a lot of time reading. But now I combine knowledge about banking and geography and also a bit of physics. So that's
I think it's a good example that it is you should be multi-talented, means multidisciplinary. Other discipline you should not ignore. As a biotechnologist, you should also learn business. I think your title of the book is very interesting, Dr. Jan. Banker's Document 2. I think he has written a nice book.
Maybe if I can explain, because sometimes it's as if banking is rocket science or it's very difficult. And if you read like economic textbooks, it's with a lot of math. But I wanted to show that you can explain like the basics of banking as people who just finished high school. You don't need to know all of the difficult theories or difficult mathematics. Like bankers are just people like you and me, and you can understand all of this economics without having a degree in finance. So that was the reason to give it to the book.
Very, very nice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ravi, for asking a very nice question, because sometimes our students think that their degree is in biotechnology, they feel reluctant to do something else. So I think this one is a good example.
You have to be multidisciplinary.
Okay, Dr. Jan, I have one important question, because global community has adopted 17 sustainable development goals to make the world a better place.
Yes.
So because now, because of this pandemic, we are having a financial troubles, not at local, national, but at global level, from where the funding comes for the international projects and to implement the agenda of the global community. So as an economist or as an expert, what do you think? I think personally, I feel it will be difficult to achieve all these goals by 2030. So what do you think from that context, Dr. Jan?
Yeah. Well, in Europe, the thing that has the most attention, apart from the coronavirus, of course, is climate change. And it has been an official goal for the European Union already for quite a few years. But it was always like something that happens in Brussels or among politicians, and a bit, yeah. Ultimately, it's the national governments and people and businesses that have to change the way they operate and stop the carbon emissions. But like recently, I mean, starting from last year, Christine Lagarde, who used to be at the IMF and is now the president of the European Central Bank, she's also really concerned about climate change. And she has said in speeches that also the European Central Bank will do its part to contribute to the goals of the European Union on that front. So we are not yet sure because the ECB is still doing a strategic review, but it's possible that they will somehow change their policy framework and also subsidize lending to green projects. So now they are funding also like oil companies and polluting companies, but it's possible that they will stop that and give like cheaper loans to companies that invest in climate-friendly technologies. So I don't know about all the global goals, but definitely climate change is a big one here in Europe. So I think that's the most important topic on the agenda here.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jan, for sharing your insights and knowledge and thoughts. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is time for closing. So, I'm sure everybody will agree with me. Our webinar session was very, very fruitful, very interactive, and it's a great success. So, I want to congratulate students because Dr. Jan, this webinar was organized by students from our Faculty of Applied Sciences, Department of Biotechnology, Faculty of Dentistry, and Faculty of Business and Management. So this entire show was organized by our students, and I think everybody will agree with me how wonderfully they have done this job and how they have displayed their talent and skills of organizing the webinar, international webinar.
Yes,
So,
I agree. Congratulations to the organizers because it was very nice.
Yeah. So especially I want to thank you because I mean just as a casual chat when I said why don't you give a talk, so I think it was a great I mean you are here giving a talk and our students and the participants are getting benefited. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll close the session, but before that one, before I pass it to MC, so I want to thank Professor Ravi and Professor Dr. Jan for sharing their thoughts and knowledge and giving new insights in the particular, respective topics, because today we have learned lots of things about the vaccine. We have learned lots of insights about the economic impact. So the virus, which was, which is originated in China, is affecting the whole world. Everybody is suffering, and it's a global ecosystem is disturbed. So to deal with these challenges, global community need to work together to deal with these types of problems. So once again, thank you very much, Professor Ravi and Dr. Jan. And before I pass it to Chai, I want to thank organizing committee, students, all the students, and importantly, the coordinator of U4 activity course, Ms. Agalia. Thank you very much for inviting me as a moderator. So it was a great honor for me to serve as a moderator. So all the participants, once again, thank you very much for asking relevant questions. Thank you, everybody. Chai, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shabazz. It was a great session today. Now, I would like to invite a representative of our U4 committee members, Amira binti Muhammad Noor Rizan, who is the student from Faculty of Dentistry in AIMST University, to share and give a thankful speech. Amira, please.
Thank you, Jenny. Honorable Dr. Shubhas Chibore, respected Ms. Agelia, our respected speaker, Prof. Ravi Chandran and Dr. Jan Masjud, our beloved chairperson, Vinotini, team members, and all the participants. I, Amira binti Muhammad Nourizan, Bachelor of Dental Technology, Year 2 student. On behalf of the teammate, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us with their presence and took out valuable time off your busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our speakers, Prof. Ravi Chandran and Dr. Jen, for making this webinar interesting and meaningful. I also wish to express my gratitude to our moderator, Dr. Subhash, for providing encouragement and support for taking effort to make this international level webinar possible. I'm also very grateful to Ms. Agelia for giving us an opportunity to organize this event. As no program can become successful with a single person, so I extend my big thanks to our team's member for their support. Thank you guys for making this webinar successful with your contribution. It's really great that this international level webinar turned out to be very successful. Last but not least, thank you so much to the wonderful students who have turned up in such great numbers, not only from our AIMST University, but also from others. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Once again, I thank all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amira. On behalf of the U4 organizing team, I would like to thank everyone for attending webinar today. Before ending the session, we would like to hear feedback from all participants by scanning the code on the screen right now. We promise that evaluation survey will not take you more than 1 minute and your feedback will be greatly appreciated. You can either scan the QR code or go to the link below. The link will be provided in the chat box as well. After the completion of the survey, you will receive an instant participant certificate in a short while, and I will keep this slide running for 2 more minutes for you to scan the QR code. We're looking forward to have you all joining us again. Thank you again, everyone, and wish you a good health and safety. So before I end the section, participant, please on your camera. We will have a screenshot section in between. Thank you.
Dear participants, I just want to add, when you are downloading the presentations of speakers, Professor Ravi's one will be sent separately, the link, because this QR code was generated just for the Dr. Jan's presentation. So later on, our organizing team will send Professor Ravi's presentation link to you. So just to let you know. Thank you. Dr. John, it's midnight in Belgium. Belgium. I think you woke up. You woke up.
Actually, it's 5 in the morning now.
You might have woke up at 1 plus or around 2 o'clock to get ready for this webinar. So especially thank you for your precious time. It's a midnight. I highly appreciate.
No problem. No problem. I was glad I could talk about this important topic, and yeah, I hope that the students also enjoyed it or learned something. So yeah.
Yeah, just to make it comfortable, we were thinking we can have separate session for you, but because of some technical reason, we didn't. I mean,
yeah, no problem, no problem.
So, thank
Can
you.
I say something, Dr. Shubhas?
Yeah, please go ahead, Ms. Agal.
All right, okay, just to wrap up everything, I think it was a very great insight, sharing knowledge of what, for those who are not in this field. And I really have to thank my heartfelt thanks to Prof. Ravichandran, Prof. Jan, and Dr. Shubhas, because this wouldn't be happen without your help, and then facilitating the students, as well as our U4 committees members of students, where I think, as what Prof. Ravi said, we went above to beyond our expectation, where U4 has gone somewhere. And I didn't expect this was an excellent job from the students. And nothing stops us, as Prof. Jen, for your knowledge, this subject supposed to be CSR, where we go out of our classroom. That means they go for activities, they go and do charity work, where they can do which is outside of the campus. They do activities outside of the campus, but due to this pandemic, this constraint makes us to work from home, where students are working at their own pace. And this is where the idea came from. So why not we do a webinar? They does campaign, but when they do campaign, they do to the general public, where they go out. But now I think this campaign have reached many audience as well. And I think I didn't expect this to go international. It's actually, we thought it's going to be a very small circle of students, but it has gone international. I'm very proud to say that many audience will get knowledge of what it is being shared throughout this webinar. And I really truly appreciate for the speakers and also Faculty of Biotechnology for helping the students. And excellent job, guys, excellent job. All right, and we will do more on this. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Agalia. I just want to add, because I think because all the time we say our students are best, our students are best. So I think through this program, our students has proved that they are really best. So I think they can do wonders, and it's a best example, Yeah. Okay, over to you, Chai. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shubhas. And once again, thank you, Prof. Ravi, Dr. Jen, and Dr. Shubhas, and Ms. Agala, and other U4 committee members. I hope everyone, and also other students, and also the public viewer, and I hope everyone have the chance to scan the QR code, and I'm going to end the meeting now. Stay safe and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Dr. Jan, bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
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 YouTube has been stopped.